There we go. Hello, everybody. This is another broadcast by Fearing Warriors. Yeah, man, this is something very different about the way it is set up today. This is set up because, oh, good lord, a little fiasco on Discord has made me have to give a lecture here on, oddly enough, a lecture I never thought I'd have to give a lecture on. It is the topic of spirits, the topic of heaven, hell, those odd concepts, and the sorry, hair in my eye, and the concept of demons versus angels. Now, now in many cultures there is a concept, so to speak, of spirits. That is generally a given when you're talking about cultures that are formed way back in the day. Oh, finally, some people are actually joining on the video. Okay, so as I was saying, this is a vid on the topic of spirits. Oh, God, Lord, and the topic of heaven, hell, demons, angels, spirits in general. This is not necessarily a topic for or against any of these particular views. This is just a vid discussing the many different types of cultures where these concepts of these spirit worlds, I guess you can call them, vary. So we're going to start with is where probably a lot of people are going to start with the Christian viewpoint, the concept of hell, the concept of heaven, the concept of demons, and concept of angels. These are very much a concept that have almost overtaken many other concepts, and in my opinion, have begun to dilute people's openness to the concepts of other cultures and how they view their world. For instance, the Christian viewpoint is heaven, hell, two separate worlds. Okay, two separate worlds. You have, and in between you have us, the living world. I'm trying to get my hands in here. Anyways, so you have heaven, hell, us, completely separate. Okay, sorry, my webcam is not exactly center the screen. Okay, so you have that concept, and depending on the way you live your life, of course that varies depending on which version of Christianity you look at. Um, you will end up in either heaven, hell, or purgatory if you believe in that concept. And we'll get into the idea of purgatory. Purgatory is largely considered just you're waiting for God to decide whether or not you're to be admitted into heaven, as far as I understand it, or admitted into hell. It's a very much you're awaiting your judgment. Then you have the living world where we live our lives. Then once your fate is decided, you gotta go into heaven or go to hell. Very distinct concepts, and it's largely based on the strict rules laid out in the Old Testament. Bear in mind, these rules are broken by many people on a constant basis. Constant basis. I mean, for instance, you'll have people that are very much heavily Christian, and by the way, I don't have my glasses on, so they're heavily Christian based, and they will view this. They will still kill. Like you have people in the military, they will still kill. Yet there's the Old Testament on the Ten Commandments, "Thou shalt not kill." So it's a very odd thing to have there. I mean, you're gonna eventually. I mean, not everyone will ever kill anyone in their lifetime. It's not something that's going to be a given, but that's kind of where our own justice system kind of falls in. It's a gray area. I mean, if a person is threatening your life, well, you got to protect your life. So, of course, you cannot guarantee the man's going to survive if you defend yourself, so you might end up killing him. So one might say that his death was unavoidable. So why should you be sent to hell for killing him because you protected yourself? It's a odd concept, and we're not going to get too much into that. Okay, we're not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. And so you have in heaven the angels. They've always existed with God somehow, and so they oversee His will, or they assist Him. Odd concept, really, to be honest. He's supposed to be this entity that's everywhere at the same time, doing everything at the same time, yet he needs angels to do his job. I don't get it. It's a concept of Christianity that people seem to not question. Anyways, back to the other concept. Okay, and then you have hell and the devil and his demons. The polar opposite of heaven with God and his angels. Almost anathemas to each other. The devil is the source of all the bad in the world, and like his demons go around causing havoc. So it's a very much a either you're good or evil concept. It's not a concept of gray where there may be, good demons, or there may be bad angels. And this is where a strange concept of the lack of a gray area starts to really mess with a lot of people's minds because it's a very strict concept: heaven, hell, either or. And so it's a and so then let's look at other cultures and their viewpoints of the spiritual worlds. You have like ancient Greece. You have the concept of the underworld. Many view the underworld as some sort of hell, but that's a very Western, very Christian viewpoint to look at the underworld and see it as like a hell because it's underneath the earth, and so it should be hell, right? I mean, it makes sense from that perspective. But the underworld isn't necessarily hell. It's just a place for the souls. That's all it is. It is a world for the souls. There is a heaven, so to speak, but it's not a heaven in the traditional Christian sense. It is a it is a place for it's a, the the it is a place for the sons of the gods. Sorry, not just the sons and daughters of the gods. Basically, just say the children of the gods, and those chosen by the gods. So basically, like Achilles being a chosen of the gods would go to this paradise within the underworld. This would be what's known as Elysium. It is a paradise, almost like the Christian version of Eden. And so he would go there because he has been chosen by the gods. He's one of the great heroes, and so naturally he should be afforded a little bit more of a prize when he goes to the underworld. I guess it makes sense. Actually, kind of does. But anyway, the children of the gods also go there because, well, they're children of the gods. They're mortal children of the gods, and so, well, they're children of the gods. Can't have them mingling with the commoners. A very old style viewpoint on that. And then we have there is a odd version of hell, so to speak, in the underworld, but this is more like a prison. More, it is more of a pit. I believe it is described as such. It's basically you have to do something horrible in your life to be sent there. Like you have to have mass murdered hundreds of people. You have to do something very, very, very bad to go to the Greek version of hell in the underworld. Other than that, every normal person that dies and goes to the underworld, just goes to the underworld. There is no heaven, there is no hell concept for them. It is, you go there and you live out their life as a spirit. You know, let's look at the version at the viewpoint of the Na'vi from the movie Avatar, made by James Cameron, and it is a great concept from it because they have what's known as a well of souls. They become one with the planet, and these trees are considered the well of their souls. It is where they can connect and find the spirits of their ancestors, and so it is a literal well. The planet is a well of souls. It is a concept that I can use as the term well of souls. I can use that as a reference point of what the vast majority of the underworld would be. It is quite simply a well of souls. It is a place for the souls to go once they die. Now, aside from that, let's look at other concepts of the spirit world. Now, before I continue on this, there is a concept of demons, so to speak, in Greek mythology, and it's not demons in the traditional sense. It's mythological creatures like the Hydra, the Cerberus, you know, these creatures that, in the Christian viewpoint, would be considered almost demon. They would be considered monsters, you know. But there's also really oddity, you know, version of these creatures. Like, I can't name the thing off the top of my head. It's a half goat, half man. I can't remember its name. Maybe some of you know it. I can't think of it for the life of me. Then you have the centaur, which is a half man, half horse. But none of these are necessarily. Then you have things like the sirens, and you have the things like the cyclopses. The centaurs and that weird half goat, half man thing. I don't know what to call it. I can't remember what it's called. And then we have the sirens, and then you have the cyclopses. The the sirens would definitely be considered a little bit more on the evil side because they're just there to wreck ships and basically nom 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 the crew. Then you have cyclopses. Cyclopses, depending again on which versions of which not really which versions, but which sections of the Greek mythology you look at, cyclopses aren't necessarily evil. In fact, some are considered to be the ones that forged Zeus's lightning bolts. They are blacksmiths, they are builders, they're not necessarily evil. Though in the Odyssey we see them in an evil light, where they try to om nom nom it was Odysseus's crew. Yeah, not cool Cyclops, but still, the concept is there. It would be considered evil in a sense, but not necessarily evil because it's a person in their viewpoint. A Cyclops, a Centaur, a half man, half goat thing. Let's just call it Phil. Phil from Hercules. Let's just call it that. They're not good or evil. They're just people. You know, they're people. They're not good or evil. They can be either or. You know, they still can be the cause of certain things that go bump in the night, but they're not necessarily evil. Sirens, on the other hand, let's consider those a little bit too evil. Consider them aquatic vampires. I don't know what else to call them. And then we have the things the like the Hydra or Cerberus. Cerberus wouldn't necessarily be considered good or evil. I mean, in a certain way, he could be considered good because Cerberus is there for one reason: guard the gateway to the underworld. Tries to make sure no one breaks in to said underworld. That's his purpose for being there. The Hydra, I don't recall if that would be considered good or evil. Sorry. I would consider the Hydra not necessarily good or evil. Definitely a danger. but that's considered just a dragon, you know. It would be considered just an animal, you know. It's not good or evil. Yeah, it terrorizes a town or two, but hey, dragons got to eat what a dragon's got to eat. Let's just consider that an animal, you know. Okay, so there isn't necessarily a true concept of a heaven or hell or a truly evil supernatural entity or a truly good supernatural entity. They can be either or. And then let's move on to the idea in Japanese mythology. Japanese mythology is by far one of the most varied in how you can view it, okay? Because depending on the time era you look at Japanese mythology, the mythology changes a little bit, you know? This is the case with any sort of old cultures. You know, the mythology gets a little bit wonky in some areas, but generally you can kind of see where they're going with it. And so let's look at something, you know, any anime person is gonna know: the kitsune, this humanoid, this human-looking entity with, you know, fox ears and a fox tail. You know, also also a kitsune can grow multiple tails. You start out Every kitsune in their lifetime starts off with one tail. Eventually, they get up to 9 tails, and so as they get older and much wiser, the more tails you have, usually the older you are, and of course, the wiser you are. Also, the more powerful you are. Now, the kitsune is a perfect subject to look at this because it is varied in how it's viewed. For instance, the kitsune can be the perfect wife. It can be the perfect partner, the perfect, you know, it, it's the perfect companion, you know, often depicted as wives, you know, guardians of shrines, not evil in any sense of the term. However, in some of the other folklore of Japanese mythology, you have the kitsune depicted as tricksters, as mischievous entities that will trick you into doing something or just overall making them a big bad nuisance of themselves. But this is kind of where that gray area comes in Japan. Because Japan doesn't necessarily have a Christian sense of the idea of what does and doesn't have a soul. In the Christian sense of the soul, a animal technically has a soul. A human, of course, has a soul. But the tree over there, the rock over there, that does not have a soul. In the Japanese Shintoism, everything does. Everything has some form of essence. You know, I would have an essence. The This would have an essence. My canteen over here. Uh, the tree outside would have an essence. You know, everything would have some form of essence. And this is what, if I had a piece of paper here, I wish I could draw this up on screen for you guys. Unfortunately, I don't think I have Microsoft Paint. I think I do. I wish I could bring it up, but I don't want to mess with my controls here. I'm turn the pages enough to find a blank one. Wish I could just draw this up right off the bat for you guys, but in the Japanese Shintoism, there exists the concept of the multiple parts of the soul, and I wish I could remember right off the bat what these multiple parts are. And you know, particularly the attributes that they have. So you have essentially these 4 souls, and of course, if you have all of them being equal to each other, then then this person will be in balance. There is no way this person can be good or evil. He or she is a pure soul. However, should you have a soul that is out of balance, and by the way, I don't remember the exact terminologies they have, the exact attributes these souls are supposed to have. So I'm not going to give names to them. So let's just use the concept of let's write S for strength and W for wisdom. Okay. So strength can of course be good, but too much strength and you become too powerful, and you might get too power hungry. The more power you get, the more power you'll want, and so it becomes a never-ending cycle. So if you have more power, if you have more power than you do wisdom, more strength than you do wisdom, then you have the risk of becoming evil, because your soul's out of balance. You have too much power, you have too much strength, and you just want more and more and more until you become this monster. And then, say we have too much wisdom and not enough strength. You don't necessarily run into someone that's necessarily bad, but it is still an imbalance in the soul. This person isn't strong, but they're very wise. This would be a sage in a sense. No, not even a sage. Sages would have this perfect balance in their soul. A person that has too much wisdom is still out of balance. They aren't necessarily evil, but they aren't necessarily in balance with themselves. They aren't necessarily in balance with the world. And this is where that concept of having the multiple souls comes in, because the Japanese mythology it largely bases the good versus evil thing based on the balance of the essence of the soul. For instance, when it comes to the katana, the Japanese samurai sword, these swords take extremely long time to make. In the traditional sense, by the way. Traditionally, a Japanese sword could take, months at best to just forge it. This is not to add any designs on it. This is just to forge the blade. Could take months. Okay? Well, we forge blades still in the traditional sense today, but we don't take as much time. What takes up the time? What takes up the time is actually the checking of the essence of the sword. You see, you'll find in the old ways of the Japanese katana blacksmithing, they didn't just ding 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 on the sword. That would be pounding it into oblivion and wouldn't do anything for the soul of the sword. What they do is they do a rhythm. You have two guys with big hammers and one guy with a small one. Yeah. You have one go ding ding. You have the two guys go ding ding. The next guy will ding with his smaller sword. Smaller hammer. So ding 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 ding, and they would form this rhythm. This ding 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 ding, and they would form this almost harmonic rhythm with it. It may not seem like important to anyone that it doesn't quite understand the concept of Shintoism, but sorry, I had to get a drink of water. It doesn't understand the concept of Shintoism, but you're taking this blade, the metals from the sword, and you're taking metals from the earth, and you're melting them down. You're reforging them into something that they were not before. So you have to make sure that what comes from that steel, when you forge it into this blade, will be be a good soul. And well, so there's this particular rhythm. People don't always notice it, but music does have an effect on us as humans. We can, even though we don't understand the words to a song, by the tone of the voice, by the beat of the rhythm of the song, we can tell its not necessarily its meaning, but its emotions. So in a way, by the rhythm of how they bang this, not bang, they beat the sword into its final shape, they are in a way appeasing, in a sense, the soul of the sword. And this is what takes so long. Because even after they've forged it out, even though they've made it completely forged, it's still not done with becoming a weapon that will forever be by the side of its master, the samurai that will wield it. It is not done being forged. It is not done becoming a katana. Now it has to be sharpened. And this process can take a long time too, because the way it's sharpened is very much by hand. There was never a grinding wheel for these blacksmiths that made katanas. They did not use a grinding wheel. What they used was something very similar. Let me see if I can find it here. Let me see if I can find my blade here. Where are you? That did my knife, actually. Oh, not lose it, but here it is. Okay. So, okay, I have it here. Here we are. Ugh. Great, you. Okay. I'm already going over the concept here. So, okay. So, in the blacksmith forge making process, they don't use a grinding wheel. They use something like this. It's what's called a whetstone. An actual Japanese whetstone would be, concave. It would have a curved inner edge. What they would do is they would run the blade along that curve. It makes the blade, instead of a standard European style cut where it's almost like this, if we picture this point as the point of the blade, a European style blade would have this. That's a lot of resistance to whatever you're cutting through. A Japanese style blade is like this. So you have that gliding motion. That's another part of what takes the Japanese forge making process, the ancient version, by the way, of making a katana. It takes so long to make one katana for a samurai, because the process is to ensure that the soul of the sword is as pure as it can be when it is handed from the blacksmith to the samurai. Because if if it cannot perform its duty, it will not serve the samurai well in combat. In fact, one of the tests for a katana, for it to even be considered to be handed to a samurai, once it's done being forged and everything, they take something like a pig or prisoner, depending on what's available, and they take the katana and slice it, collar to hip. If it cuts all the way through, it's a good katana, and it can be handed to the samurai with good sound mind and soul that it will perform its job. But if it doesn't, it's thrown into the scrap pile, and I don't recall exactly what they do with it, but I don't recall if they melt it down into another katana or if they just smash it and never use that metal again because it has a bad soul. I've already gone over this concept of the Shintoism idea of the multiple souls, and how each one needs to be in a certain balance for it to be a good soul. And so we have all these concepts of the soul. And so you have the idea of the kitsune, which not necessarily, dude. A true Japanese katana, a true one, by the way, not some factory forged one. A true Japanese blacksmith, ancient blacksmith style forged katana is strong. These are things that could actually literally cut a bullet in two just by it standing there alone if shot with a bullet. These are very strong blades if made right in the traditional way. These are blades that you could bend to such a degree, but they would not break. They would bounce back to the original form. These are blades meant to cut. These are blades not meant to brutally hack a person to bits. These are blades meant to glide through the body with ease, to cut a person collar to hip with such ease that you wouldn't even need to actually make a second cut through the person. For best example here, Deadpool, the Deadpool movie, the first one, when he goes to slice his katana through one guy, it gets stuck, and then he basically jumps and pushes it all the way through again. That's a sign that his katana was not made correctly in the traditional sense. And so, for a blacksmith that is forging that kind of sword in the very traditional ancient Japan style, that sword would never make it into the hands of a samurai. That sword would be thrown on the scrap pile. And so they're meant to cut. They're not meant to hack. They're not meant to chop. They're not meant to stab. Well, they can stab. They're very good at it. But that's not the art of the samurai. They take slicing cuts at the opponent. In fact, a samurai would spend a very long time just learning the simple slicing motion of his sword, let alone actually learning the combat styles required for actual combat against another opponent. He spends quite a lot of time just learning the simple slicing motion. These are not swords meant to brutalize a person to death. These are swords meant to cut. A true Japanese katana will be, if you had one, like a small kitchen knife version of a katana, like a tanto, or a tanto really is just a mini katana, but not to the same exacting standards. But if you say you had a Japanese katana in the size of a kitchen knife, that knife would be the sharpest tool in your kitchen. You would not need another knife. Yeah, they could, but you gotta remember, a broadsword is made thick. It is made by a lot of metal. That is a heavy weapon. A broadsword is not meant to cut. A broadsword is not meant as a cutting weapon. A broadsword is meant quite simply as a chopper. In fact, this would be considered a chopper. It's a stabber, don't get me wrong, but it's considered a chopper. It's because of this. This end here. This wide back end combined with the thick belly here and this narrow point, this would be considered a chopper. It can stab, but it is not a slicer. It is a chopper. That is what a broadsword is. It is a chopper weapon. It is not meant to, it is not meant to slice, to cut through something. Something like, hold on a second, let's see if I can find it. Actually, I don't think I have it with me. Dang it. Okay. I actually did have a curved blade here for a while. But a katana is curved. It is meant to slice through a person like a sashimi. Broadswords are big, heavy weapons. Not meant to be. They're not necessarily meant to deal with something like a standard person. These were swords. The broadsword was meant quite simply to handle someone in armor. These are not swords meant to deal with some in actually heavier plated armor. These are not swords meant to deal with a person that may not necessarily be wearing plate armor. A katana is designed quite simply to cut through armor that isn't metal. But it is still a weapon that if you found that chink in that armor, found that gap in the plating of the armor, and you exploited it, that person is dead on the other end. There is no coming back from that. Well, that's the thing. Okay, I need to explain this style of the way a katana is built versus a broadsword. Even though the broadswords are not much bigger than a katana, they're still heavier, actually. Because a katana is a thin slicing weapon. So let me see if I can draw this up best here. Okay, so you have a katana. It's a thin, light slicing weapon versus a thicker broadsword. A thicker broadsword is a thicker hunk of metal, actually. And so you have something like a katana that may be very thin, providing very little of an edge to the. By the way, this would be considered the side view if you were to look at the katana. It would be a very thin blade versus something like a broadsword, which would be thicker. What was I wrong page? There we are. It's not technically that much thicker, but it makes all the difference. This is kind of where the concept of the size and what is differences. Okay, a katana is a very narrow blade. Maybe the katana's only about yay wide as far as like from blade to back end. It's only about yay big. Broadsword, it's bigger. It's wider. That's a lot more metal that's there. Not to mention you have the pommel and not. Well, sorry, you have the handle and you have the pommel and you have the guard. These are They're very different weapons made for very different things, and you can tell by a bladed weapon's purpose by its shape and its shape alone. Actually, you have something like, if I can find my pen again. Oh crap, where did my pen go? Ah, here it is. You have something like a khopesh, which is a inner curved blade. This is what would be considered a. Sorry, which page is on? Okay, a khopesh. Okay, that's a khopesh. This right here would be considered the inner. Would actually be the blade part. A khopesh is a cutting weapon, actually, but it is a recurve weapon. However, it is because of this recurve that it's not just a cutting weapon. It is also a chopping weapon. That recurve allows it to chop through something like wood. But it is also able to slice. If you get around a person and do a circular motion, it would be a slicer. However, it is also primarily a chopper, but it can also slice. You have something like a rapier, which provides a very small point with a long, narrow shaft. A rapier is a stabber, pure and simple. It is not a slicer. It is not a chopper. It is a stabber. It is not meant to. It is not meant to cut. It is not meant to do anything else other than stab. Then you have a saber. A saber is very similar in a way to a katana in a sense. However, a saber is still in a sense a chopper because of the lack of a curve. A saber still provides that flat edge. However, a saber does provide a point. So it can still stab, but it's not meant to outright slice, but it's not meant to outright, chop. It can do both, but not as well as a broadsword. It is primarily something meant to be used. Now, it may have a slight curve to it, but not by much. And the European style of cutting an edge into a blade is wholly insufficient compared to a Japanese style cut. And so then we have something like the cutlass. The cutlass. A very broad, a very thick, blade, heavy blade, but with a curve to it, meant to be a cutter, but that weight behind it adds a chopping sense to it. And a cutlass very much broadsword is a chopper. I gotta clarify that. A broadsword is a chopper, not a cutter. And a broadsword is also a stabber / chopper. It is not a cutter. A cutlass, despite its name, is a slicer / chopper weapon. And a cutlass would be something used in cavalry or on a ship. Because one, it's short, it's short, but when you're swinging from a rope, that's a lot of mass, both you and the sword, put behind that edge. And when you go to swing, that curved edge allows you to slice across your opponent in a continuous slice. But that mass also means that if you happen to whack something with it instead of actually slice through them, you're still going to do some dang damage. And it also makes it great for cavalry, because it's that very same concept. You got the weight of the horse, you got the weight of the person, and you got the sword. A thick sword with a curve, but also the weight behind it to chop / slice. It will do a slicing motion if it does so, but if it just does a chop motion, it will still do some major damage. And then we get into something like, a tanto. Now, of course, the tanto does vary from time frame to time frame, but the overall design is relatively the same. It is quite simply the front end of a katana, just straighter. A tanto is mostly a pure... This is where I love demonstrating this, okay? Okay. I'm going to draw it out here. Okay, so... bear in mind that these things would be to a point, not necessarily just rounded. Okay. Okay, so... this here would be a really rough design of the Japanese style edge making. This right here would be this would be if you cross-sectioned a katana. This would be if you cross-sectioned a European blade. Imagine whatever you're cutting / slicing going across the metal as you're slicing / cutting. What's more easy for the flesh to go off of? going over, going sliding down a mountain, or going down or doing something that basically forces it to go down an upper ramp. Basically, you have something like this. Imagine your hand like this. Run your hand across this, like that. It's a smooth transition. Now do this. Try doing the same thing. It's not such a smooth transition, is it? You meet a lot of force. You have all of that meat slash whatever you're cutting into going up this. And if you're cutting through a person, that can quickly jam because it's having to push away whatever it is cutting through. Versus a katana, it just slides on through. That is the difference between the katana and the way the Japanese. Yes, you could, but I would bring a katana in myself because a cut from a katana would not be a cut you would be, nursing back to health anytime soon. If I cut into your arm with a katana with a decent swing, you're not keeping that arm. Of course, the same could be said for a broadsword, but the difference is I could cut you from neck to hip with a katana. A broadsword would get lodged halfway down my shoulder. Yes, but that gets into the problem of weight and, of course, swing speed. A katana is light, made for quick, swinging arcs. A great sword is a massive weapon, not meant for close quarters combat. The great sword was originally designed, maybe light and flimsy as hell, but the thing about a katana is it is still strong. It may seem flimsy, but that is per its design. It will spring, whatnot, but it is strong. You would be surprised at how strong a katana is. If you were to put a broadsword under the same stresses on a bend test, but here's the thing, you could bend it so much it would not break. But you do that to a broadsword and it breaks. Because here's the rule when it comes to blacksmithing. A bent sword can be fixed. A broken sword cannot. That is where the katana has its value. It springs back every time. You could bend it, it would seem flimsy. You would like, what the heck? But let go of it, and it bends right on back. You would have to bend it to such an extreme before it would break. Versus a broadsword, you wouldn't need to bend it all that much to actually get it to snap. And that is not repairable. So that's kind of why a katana is, in my opinion, just a great weapon. Plus, to me, it's a weapon that would be easier to use, in my opinion. Broadsword is too heavy and too much of a cumbersome weapon, actually. Versus the katana, it's not too cumbersome. It's thinner. It's smaller. It's more meant for close quarters. Versus a broadsword, it's not. But then again, this is not the purpose of this video. This is not the purpose. Either way, but again, this is not the purpose of this video to talk about bladed weapons. I'm using the concept of the katana to explain the concept of the soul that the Japanese have. The Shintoism concept. The Shintoism concept of the multiple souls and them being in balance. This is where that concept of A demon may not be bad or evil in Japanese mythology. You could have a kitsune, what would be considered in Japanese mythology is considered in its essence a demon. It is a supernatural entity. In Japan, a demon may not necessarily refer to a bad entity. It would be considered a catch-all term for anything that is a supernatural entity. But a demon isn't necessarily good or bad in Japanese mythology. And goes down to the Shintoism. Because if you have the multiple souls, even a demon has these multiple souls. If they are in a certain balance with each other, then that demon isn't bad. He is like you or I. He has some demon tendencies. That, but here's the thing: the lore isn't always consistent. There is another set of there is another set of lores for the kitsune. There is the trickster version of the kitsune, where they're just pranksters, basically Loki, just a kitsune. And then there's the version of them that are almost companions, you know, the perfect spouse, the perfect friend. But they're not evil. They're a guardian of sorts. And there are shrines where kitsunes are depicted as a shrine's guardian. And this is where the idea of the multiple tails comes in. No, not necessarily. This is even in ancient Japanese lore. This is all old lore for the kitsune. This is not just anime. There's the multiple tail concept of the kitsune, where over their years, as they get wiser, as they get more powerful in a sense as well, they get multiple tails. They start off with one tail, then they eventually get to 9 tails. A 9-tailed kitsune, or a 9-tailed fox, depending on what you want to call it, is a very wise, very knowledgeable kitsune. These would be the guardians of a shrine. And it's not always modern lore that messes with these. It's sometimes old lore. These are lores written down in ancient texts. These aren't just modern day anime. Then you have concepts in other cultures where they don't have a concept of heaven or hell. For example, as I said, Greek mythology, they don't have a concept of a true heaven or hell. They have the underworld. It is what I've been describing, a well of souls, a place where the souls go. Sure, there's Elysium and whatever they call the equivalent of a prison, but it is not hell. It is not heaven. Elysium is a very, very, very exclusive club. You have to be a child of the gods, or one chosen by the gods. Like Achilles would be there. Hercules would be there. He's one of Zeus's children, mortal children to be exact. He would be there, and so would Achilles. Achilles being one of the chosen of the gods. He's dead, but he's one of their chosen warriors, so he would be there. But to get to the hell version of the underworld, you have to do something very, 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 very bad in your lifetime to actually get sent there. It is not the rest of it is just purely just a community of souls. There's not much else to call it other than just a well of souls. And then we get to the other concepts of a heaven/hell that are way black and white. As I said before, Yeah, but again, you have to do something very very bad to even get sent there. Elysium is just a place for the children of the gods and those chosen by the gods. But either way, again, that's beside the point here. The Christian version of heaven slash hell is very strict, very much a black and white. This, I believe, is where your sister is getting kind of confused, because it's too much of the viewpoint of the black and white heaven hell. That's it, and this is where that gray area of so many cultures conflicts. Oh my god, I'm trying to get there, dude. I'm trying to get there. Okay, just bear with me here. Okay. Anyways, so the concept of heaven and hell in the Christian sense is heaven's good. You go there if you do all the good stuff in your life and you abide by God's rules. Why military people are able to get sent there, I don't know. Because they break the rule of thou shalt not kill pretty much on a daily basis. Why they get sent to heaven is beyond me. Beyond me. And let's not even get us started on the Great Crusade, on the Crusade stuff. I'm like, uh, dude, just bear with me here. Just bear with me on this, okay? Okay, just bear with me. This is just an overall video explaining the differences in various cultures and how they view the spirit world. Okay, just bear with me on this. Anyway, the so you have the where was I? Okay, where was I? Shoot, I forgot my line of thought. Crap. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. That's not even started on the Crusades and whatnot. Well, to be honest, the churches. But again, this is all beside the point. That was just a small segue. But again, this is beside the point. And yes, I was getting around to that. I was actually about to get to that. So you have heaven. Once you've been judged worthy of being inside the gates of heaven, you've been good enough in your life that you've been allowed in. That's apparently the good side. Hell is where you're sent if you broke enough rules to get, well, banished to hell. And then you have purgatory. You're basically awaiting judgment. That's pretty much it. But then we get to the concept of limbo. Now, limbo, of course, is also a term used in as a figure of speech. Like, say, you have a soldier. We can use the military concept here. Like a soldier that has had his entire unit wiped out. He's the last man standing in his unit. His commanding officer might tell him that might end up saying something along the lines, "I'm not going to leave you in limbo and not have you part of a team." Meaning, he's not going to leave him hanging. He's not going to leave him alone as a lone soldier. He's going to find him a new team. He's going to assign him to a new team. He's not going to leave him there for long. And so that's where the term limbo comes from. And limbo is very much. Oh my god. Okay, I admit that was actually kind of funny. But but limbo is kind of an interesting concept. It is, in a way, the spirit world, but with contact to our world. And so this is where where you can have the concept of poltergeists. You know, the concept of spirits messing with things. They can do this in limbo. You know, they can mess with things, you know, in our world through limbo. But they're not in our world. They're in another plane. Kind of connected, in a sense, to the heaven slash hell. But it is not purgatory. It is not truly connected. Limbo is a weird concept and is a very strange concept that is hard for me to truly understand at the moment. But limbo is kind of a you can kind of consider ghosts to be entities that have not quite been able to accept that they have to move on. There is something in this world keeping them here. There is something that they must do. There is something that they must fulfill that keeps them here and keeps them, you know, tied to this world. Once that thing is complete, then they can go, say, to purgatory or for heaven for that matter, once they've completed their assignment, whatever it is that is keeping them here. Like, say they have a loved one that is in danger because, you know, that they were murdered, and now their loved one is in danger, and they have to somehow ensure their loved one's safety. Well, they're going to continue to be tied to this world because their loved one is in danger. But once their loved one is safe, their job is done. And so they move on. And so it's a very weird concept. I'm not entirely sure that would be considered limbo, but I can't remember exactly. Now, this is where we get into the concept of heaven/hell. Ah, and so, and this is, and as I've said before in the beginning of this video, this is not to dispute any one particular belief system. This is not to discount the concept of a heaven or hell being any shape or form real. The thing is, even though a lot of cultures don't have a true sense of a pure heaven, pure hell, they do have equivalents. Even Japanese mythology does have its equivalent, but it is not entirely hell. It is not entirely heaven, but they are equivalents. Because even though you might have the concept of a well of souls, like in Greek mythology, well, you can't have. Yeah, that makes sense. But you may have the concept of a. Even though you may have a well of souls, like in Greek mythology, you can't justify in your head that a mass murderer is gonna be amongst the general populace in the underworld. So you kind of have to send the mass murderer that has murdered thousands of people somewhere else, and so you send him to Tartarus. But then you have the children of the gods and the ones chosen by the gods, ones worthy of a little more luxury in the eyes of the gods. And so you send them to Elysium. Because gods, of course, live on Mount Olympus. But because they're mortal children, when they die, can't necessarily go to Mount Olympus because they're not gods. They're demigods. But they're not gods. They're still mortal. And you have those chosen by the gods. The gods can't just make their chosen champions gods. They can't just make them demigods. But they've chosen them. They are worthy of a little more status. So you send them to Elysium, a paradise. And so there are a lot of cultures that don't have a true concept of heaven or hell, but they have equivalents that are very specific in what would require one to be sent to either or. Ah, makes sense a bit. And so you have a lot of these concepts of heaven/hell or heaven/hell equivalents, but are very specific in what would warrant one going there. Yeah, that would make a little bit of sense. And so, even though the Japanese mythology doesn't necessarily have the a true sense of a demon and it being an evil creature, they do recognize that really bad people have to go somewhere else other than the good people. they don't have a true sense of a true heaven slash hell. In the late mythology, they do kind of form one. Not the late, the really more recent mythology, they do form one, but not to a true extent. I mean, you have a place where the souls will go, and you do have the concept of a kind of a hell, but it is not truly what one would consider hell in the Christian sense. And so these are where these concepts of heavens and hells kind of blur when you start looking outside the Christian viewpoint. And I know a lot of Christians are going to be harping on me about this video, about this, because, well, I'm using them as the focal point of where the concepts of heaven and hell blur. And it's quite simply because it's such an easy concept of easy version of heaven and hell to use. I don't exactly recall. I don't recall their actual names. I believe I've a lot of times I've heard the world where souls go usually just referred to as like the I'm trying to remember here. I've heard it referred to as netherworld or just you know. It all depends, I'm guessing, on what you choose to call it, because this is where I need to clarify the term netherworld and underworld, because these are terminologies that often get confused. The underworld, if I recall correctly, the underworld isn't a concept that typically means hell. This is a concept that could actually be formed quite early in human history when we started burying our dead. And, well, we have started forming these concepts of a world for the souls. But in our heads, our very ancient minds, the concept of our loved ones being in the ground and then all of a sudden ending up in the sky, quite a large leap of logic when you're considering that you wouldn't really understand the concept of how the guy on the ground gets in the sky. So you would need a very complex mindset to include somehow that person's soul getting into the sky. But it is much easier to then think that maybe he doesn't go to the sky. Maybe because he's in the ground, and because the plants around us grow up from the ground, that his soul doesn't go to the sky, his soul goes to the ground. And so then you have this idea of an under being the key term here, under the world, a world under the world. So you have an underworld where the souls go. In early human history, that would have been an easier concept to grasp than a heaven, a afterlife in the sky. It's a much easier concept to grasp. But I don't truly recall what the equivalents were called. That's why I didn't quite touch on them too much, because I don't recall their names. But I do know that they do have them. Now, I recall in some Japanese mythology, heaven is like Mount Olympus. It is a place for the gods. But again, I'm a little rusty on that concept, and I don't recall the names to be exact. And this is kind of where we start blurring the lines of some of the Japanese mythology mixed with the Shintoism. Because the Shintoism is about the balance of the multiple souls, each representing a different trait of the soul. And depending on what trait is greater than the others, depends on what your soul's balance is. Have too much strength and you become too power hungry, you become too strong, and eventually you become evil. Versus you have too much wisdom, you're not strong, but well, that's kind of where see, this is kind of where we start getting into the other cultures. In the concept of Japanese mythology, demons weren't necessarily in a different plane, and demons weren't always connected to their equivalent of hell. You had demons that, yes, were gatekeepers to the afterlife, and you had demons that ferried people to the afterlife. Not necessarily. Again, this is where these concepts start getting weird when we start talking to other cultures. Because again, not all of them are below or above. Some of them are just different. Is all I can say. But so you have demons that are not in our plane in some cultures, but in others they are. A kitsune would be a very real entity in our world. I'm trying to remember the name of it. For the life of me, I can't remember the exact name. And I keep on wanting to call it a piper, but I can't. But then I know that's not what it's called. It is a. It is a. There's various differences in the piper spirit in Japanese mythology. And I forgot exactly its exact name. But then you have something that would technically be very much an evil entity in Japanese mythology, the Kappa. The Kappa, to my knowledge, is... I'm not sure if that's what it's called. I'd have to look it up again. But, in Japanese mythology, the Kappa is a water imp. But this imp, to my knowledge, it has very much the same mythology throughout history. It lies in wait in the water until someone gets a little too far into the water, and it reaches up, grabs them, pulls them in, and drowns them to death. What it does for them afterwards, I don't recall. I think it eats them. Don't quote me on that. And so, the Kappa would represent, in the mind of a person... Yeah, they would be. And of course, the Kappa would be considered a lower level demon. But again, it is very much would have had a very, very real presence in our world. This would not have been something in a different plane of existence. This would have been something that was very real in our world, in Japanese mythology. Just like the Kitsune. The Kitsune would have been considered a very real entity. You know, it would not have been in a different plane of existence. It would have had supernatural powers, to be sure, but it would not have been in a different plane of existence. But the Kappa, the Kitsune, would all fall under the catch-all category in the sense of Japanese mythology. They would have fallen under the catch-all category of demon. These things would be considered demons. But this is where we enter the concept of Shintoism. But here's the thing. Their concept of heaven or hell isn't tied to our world. The Japanese mythology, I recall, their equivalent of heaven per se is just the realm of the gods. And that's it, if I recall correctly. But their version of hell isn't necessarily a hell. I can't recall exactly. I know they have an equivalent of the two for the mortals. I just can't remember them. But they would refer to... And they do have a spirit world, per se. A nether world. But they don't... But in that nether world, there of course would be a place for good guys and a place for the bad guys. But there would also be just a communal area. Very much like Greek mythology. But here's the thing. These entities, the Kitsune and the Kappa, they're not directly tied to the spirit world. In Japanese mythology, there are entities directly tied to the spirit world and are only tied to the spirit world. But there are those that aren't. The Kitsune are one of them. And so is the Kappa. The Kappa is a entity that exists purely in our world. the Kitsune is an entity that exists purely in our world. It has no ties to the Netherworld. Then you have that weird Piper demon. I forgot exactly what it's called. I know it has a name, and I know it has a name. I can't remember exactly. And this is again where that concept of the graying area that is Shintoism based around the balance of the soul. Because even these demons have this balance. And so you have this Piper-like demon that you have these spirits of children following it around. And again, depending on the lore, this demon leads these children along until it devours them, or it is leading these children along trying to soothe their souls. But if these children's souls do not come to terms and accept, you know, you know, peace, come to terms with their death, and and whatnot, this demon will forever imprison them in the equivalent of hell. And this entity has a very real link to the Netherworld. Then you have entities, but again, Japanese mythology has entities that have direct ties to the Netherworld. And then you have okay, so it is that okay, and so you have entities that have a direct tie to the spirit world, and ones that don't. The Japanese mythology is very clear on that part. They have entities that have direct ties to the spirit world, and ones that don't. They have power in our world, but they do not have ties to the spirit world. And then you have, Greek mythology. You have the centaur. You have the weird half man, half goat thing. I can't remember its name. I'm just gonna call it Phil. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna call it Phil. Because Hercules. Anyways, you have those things. If we were to follow Japanese mythology and apply it to Greek mythology, the concept of the centaur, the concept of Phil, would be very much that they would be considered a demon. But a centaur and Phil aren't bad and they aren't good. They're just like us. They are like people. They have lives. They can be good or bad, depending on how they choose to live their life. Then you have the Cyclops. The Cyclops help forge. Huh. No, I recall that there was a Japanese equivalent. I'd have to look it up, but I know there's a Japanese equivalent. But I do know there is one. I just can't recall what it is at the moment. There is a Japanese equivalent. And so you have one that's a... Oh, where was I going with this? Oh yeah. And so if we apply the Japanese concept of that demon could essentially be a catch-all term for an entity of a satyr? A satyr? Satyr or satyr? I think it's a satyr. I'm trying to remember my Latin / Greek pronunciations here. But, okay. So I'm still gonna call it Phil because it's easier. and so, and so there are concepts where the term demon can be used as a catch-all term. Sort of like in Warhammer 40k, in the beginning of the Horus Heresy, where they still didn't accept the idea of demons. They were still using the Imperial Truth. Oh, Satyr? Okay. So the Imperial Truth, at the beginning of before the Horus Heresy even started, when the Emperor was doing the Great Crusade, the Imperial Truth was a very blunt and unforgiving truth that there are no gods in our universe. There are no demons. There are no spirits. We're alone as far as like you know in terms of if there are gods and whatnot. We're There are no gods to preordain our destinies in an unforgiving universe. There's just the cold, hard logic of science. That was originally the imperial truth in Warhammer 40k. Before the Horus Heresy even started, the Emperor had him implemented it because he was trying to defeat the Chaos Gods. And so when Horus was talking to Garviel Loken in, I believe it was, yeah, it was the first book, Horus Rises. He talks to Loken when Loken had an encounter with a demon for the first time. Well, he had encountered actually demons beforehand, but it was the first time he had ever seen a battle brother and Astartes turn to a demon. He had seen it happen to Psykers. He had seen it happen within the warp, but he had never seen it happen in the material universe to an Astartes. This shook him up. And Horus, one of the Primarchs, his gene father in a way, was talking to him, trying to help him rationalize what just happened. And even though he admitted that though their current empire does not like to use the terms demons or spirits, he admits that the words work well enough to describe the entity that had taken over Garviel Loken's battle brother. He allowed it to be used as a catch-all term because the term worked well enough. And so why find a new word to replace a one that already works? And so even though it wouldn't necessarily be considered a demon in the eyes of the Imperial Truth, but the term works well enough considering what it could do, what it did to Xavier Jubal, and what Garviel Loken saw. There was no other word that could be used to describe what Xavier Jubal, Garviel Loken's battle brother, had become. There was no other word to describe it. There was nothing he could, say that would avoid using terms like demon or spirit. So the words work well enough. Why invent new ones? And so that was Horus's logic there. And so the concept of demons could be used as a catch-all term for anything that is supernatural, that is not necessarily within... Sure, go ahead. I mean, I get that I was saying, you don't believe hell exists, and I'm not disputing that. I'm going to make that clear. I'm not disputing it. I had a good drink of water anyways. Okay. So yeah, okay. So I get what you're saying now. And again, I'm trying to make this clear. I'm not disputing the concept of there being bad demons, or that there is a version of a hell, so to speak. And this is why in the chat on Discord I made a distinction between a hellbound demon and an earthbound demon. And so a hellbound demon would be, in essence, the demons from hell, the evil demons, the ones that would very much love to fuck us over, you know. But see, that's where I'm kind of that's where the con. But see, that's the thing. Not all demons are such, and this is in many different cultures. This is why I'm trying to get that across, y'all. Not all demons are that such a way. Again, demons can be used as a catch-all term, much like in Japanese mythology. You have things like the kitsune, that in some of the lore in Japanese mythology that would be ancient Japanese mythology, they're not evil, but they're referred to as a demon or a guardian spirit. And so then you have something like a centaur, which, if we're to follow the catch-all term of a kitsune, falling under the catch-all term of a demon, a centaur would be considered one. And this is why I'm stressing the concept here. This is why I'm stretching the stressing, sorry, not stretching, stressing the concept of two different factions. Okay? Two different factions. You have hellbound demons, the demons from hell, the ones that are purely evil. Those are the ones you had a contact with. Then you have the earthbound demons, things like centaurs, things like kitsunes, things like, well, I'm not going to count kappas here. Well, actually, no, I have to count kappas because they're not connected to hell per se. You have things like vampires, you have things like werewolves, things that aren't directly connected to hell. These are things that, yeah, may not be nice to come into contact with, but they aren't from hell. And this is why I'm stressing this. But see, that's the thing. That's the thing. You're viewing these things from a. But see, okay. Look, Fang. This is kind of where you're kind of clashing with the many different cultures. You have many different cultures that view the term spirit or demon as almost one and the same. And this is, and again, in the Japanese mythology, a kitsune, a omibozu, a kappa, they would fall under the same category. They would be considered a demon of sorts. A spirit and a demon would be one and the same. Anything that would not have been a mortal person. And that's the thing. That's the thing. In Japanese mythology, demon is used as a catch-all term. For example, okay, take Warhammer 40k in the early Horus Heresy, before the Horus Heresy, actually in the Great Crusade. They used the term demon as a catch-all term, purely to label something supernatural. And this is kind of where I would prefer you and Luna to specify what you mean when you say demon. Because again, demon and supernatural creature, they would of course be a very nice distinction to have. I know it's, and I tend to use demon occasionally for catch all. I mean, I mean, I might refer to one of my OCs as a demon, but they aren't a demon in the traditional sense. Okay, because if you label your OCs as demons, then but they're still a decent, but you still have them as a decent person, you're clashing in a way with your own definition of demon. That's kind of what's irking us. Because, and this is kind of where my OC having a vendetta against demons is kind of where I'm referring to what I would call a hellbound demon, demons from hell. And so as long as, because here's the thing, if your OC is a supernatural creature, that would be lovely to actually have that specified instead of you using the term demon as a catch-all term, because it gets kind of confusing sometimes in the middle of the role plays when we have creatures referred to in the thing as demons, but they're not demons in the traditional sense. You get where I'm coming from on that, right? Okay, so if we just on the Discord server can kind of agree to, okay, thank you for that specification. And okay, I will actually on the Discord I will actually put in a small little edit to like the OC formation things. I might have to make something up for it, but I will have it set so where if your OC isn't a demon per se, that mm, that it would be labeled as a supernatural entity, or just labeled as some form of just creature. You know, like the name of the creature rather than it being a demon. I'll set that up so that we can be clear on where everyone is going with the concept of a demon. Because Luna had created an OC that didn't make sense. The fact that it wasn't necessarily intended to screw everyone over, and so it's like it didn't make sense to me. Okay, because if you look at one of Luna's OCs, I didn't see how it would be considered a demon because it fit the profile of every other supernatural entity creature that we have in the channel. So it didn't quite fit to why my OC that hates demons would hate her OC. It's kind of where it got confused. Because the way I read her OC's description, it didn't seem like it was a demon from hell. That was the confusing part. I mean, if it was I mean, if it is intended to be a demon from hell, then I mean, we weren't necessarily going for that art section of the events right now. If we're even going to go for that, I'm still somewhat against it. I mean, I'm considering. a crypt, a crypt, a crypt. It's what the heck is Cypric? Eh? I think is that Cypric? What kind of word is that? Oh, you mean cryptic? I think that's what you mean. It's a cryptic. I think I know what the word. I think I know what word you're talking about, and I have heard of it before from cryptology. But I was like, yeah, I get what you're talking about now. Yeah, yeah, I will set that up. Yeah, yeah, okay, that does make a bit of sense. Okay, okay, cryptic. So, so sorry, it's late. It's late over here. Yeah, I will have it. I will have something set up in the Discord after this vid. Uh, it's okay. It's okay, dude. Yeah, I will. I will have something set up in the Discord after this to kind of set it up. So, yeah, I get the word now. Yeah, cryptic. But I will set something up in the Discord to just so that people are clear what would be considered a demon and what would be considered a cryptic or supernatural entity, so that people would know that the demons would be considered just outright considering causing havoc in the station, and not necessarily just not necessarily just existing, I guess you could say. Don't know how else to describe it. It is like 12:15. It is about almost 1 o'clock here, and here where I'm living. Holy crap! I've been up quite late. Yeah, let me look at her OC, because the way her OC was named, it just the way it was designed and named. Oh no, where is it? Yeah, the way her OC, she called her OC a demon, but the way her OC was supposed to be paired with another OC, it didn't make sense. And so, you know, so it was like, I mean, it made no sense on why that OC would be considered a demon if it didn't follow what y'all were describing as demons. That's kind of what. No, bro. I'm sorry. I just it was yeah. I mean, I'll set something up in the Discord later today. Yeah, it is today. It's tomorrow. She. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll set it up here later. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Just in this video, I was trying to go over the concepts of the the cultural. Yeah. Uh, in this video, I was just trying to just go over the concepts culturally, the concepts of the differences between the way cultures would view the concept of a demon versus a in the concept of demons, heaven, hell, where their concepts of what the differences of concepts are, and you know what would be considered a demon, what would be considered not demon, what would be considered evil, what wouldn't be considered evil, that kind of thing. I was just trying to go over the cultural aspects, because I'm actually trying to become an anthem. Eh? Oh, that. Yeah, and I think what the main issue is we kind of clash on the cultural aspects of things, because I tend to stand on the standpoint of trying to be culturally open, and so and so the thing is that I'm actually studying to become an anthropologist, so having the viewpoint a of the of a culture is the way a culture is set in stone, and how way one culture views another culture is again set in stone. I don't view a culture from one particular viewpoint. I kind of take a third party perspective when it comes to viewing cultures. In fact, the way I view cultures is I literally separate my mind from whatever it is I believe moral. For instance, cannibalism. Just throwing this one out there. I know it's a controversial topic, but cannibalism in some cultures is a thing. It is not seen as eating your loved one. It is not seen as that. If a loved one dies, you eat them not for food, not to eat them for the food. You eat them to transfer their energy to you. You are honoring them. You're honoring them and taking in their soul to be with you, to keep them with you, to keep their soul essence with you. And it's a really alien concept for a lot of people in many modern day cultures to understand, because morally we've programmed in modern day society, morally programmed ourselves via many other cultures, like Christianity and like many other cultures where that was not acceptable, that cannibalism isn't something we do. Dude, um, you better hope no one scroll, zooms in on the screen here. You might forget that I have the chat thing come up on the screen here. Just gonna right around here, have the chat thing come up. So that just appeared in chat. Ah, there is a reason why human beings are considered the other white meat. Don't ask. Yeah, it's right about here, buddy. Right about there. Yeah, human beings are often called the other white meat. Either way, but that's way off topic. But either way, segue to the topic. Yeah, the way the way I view a culture is, I view a culture as if I know nothing. You know, as far as their culture is concerned, and I don't have a culture of my own. I view it from that perspective. So if someone were to try to explain to me why their culture practices cannibalism, I don't view it from the viewpoint of a modern day society person. I view it as a person just that absolutely knows nothing, of cultural, norms. I just view it from the standpoint of a person that knows absolutely nothing. It has no culture of their own. It just takes in the knowledge. That's the way I view it. And so I'm very much a person that I really love looking into cultures, and I love trying to understand them. And this is the viewpoints of anthropologists. Anthropologists look at cultures and look at various things from a whole different perspective compared to other people. Because we don't view cultures from the perspective of our own. We view a culture from the perspective of nothing. We view it from the perspective that we don't know their culture. We don't have our own. We're just learning this culture, you know? We're learning, we're keeping open minds. If we start thinking, comparing their culture to our culture, and saying, like say that the, let's say a person sees cannibalism. I have looked into Norse culture. I actually have looked into it quite a bit. I don't have any sort of Norwegian or Norse bloodline in me. I do have Scottish in me, though. Good lord, sometimes the Scottish comes out real bad. But yeah, I'm not Norse per se. I do like some of the Norse culture. Some of it is a little too brutal for me, but I do like it. And so it's one of the reasons why I really love the Space Wolves. I love how some people actually call the Space Wolves Space Vikings. Let me align the camera here. There we go. Yeah, I like the Space Wolves pretty much because they are Astartes Vikings. I really love them for that reason alone. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I won't argue with that. I won't argue with that, really. They're very similar. Um, yeah, and so if an anthropologist walked up to an encampment of people that practice cannibalism, their viewpoint of a person that was, like, say, a priest from some other culture came in and saw them, a anthropologist would look upon this like, okay, they practice cannibalism. Yeah, they are alike. Yeah, and yeah, and so a anthropologist would look at the culture that practice cannibalism like, okay, that's odd. How does it work for them? A person from another culture, like, again, I hate that I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail for this from Christians, but again, they don't make themselves hard targets here. I mean, it's easy to reference, it's easy to utilize. Much easier, in fact. Anyways, so if a Christian person walked up to a camp of people that practice cannibalism, they were like, what the fuck? That's odd and very, very, very wrong. My culture's definitely better than that. That would be the viewpoint a person of another culture that doesn't practice the mindset of being open-minded when it comes to cultures would take. And that's what's called cultural relativism versus cultural centralism. Anthropologists are very cultural relative, meaning that we viewpoint we take viewpoints of cultures irrelevant of our own. We don't look at our cultures and kind of compare the two. We look at them and know that they are different, but neither of the two is better than the other. Neither of them are better. It just works for that people. Cultural centralism is very much my culture's better than yours, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, and that's kind of what I try to practice is looking at other cultures and why I try to look at them from a very different standpoint than the others. It's like I don't compare Christianity to Japanese mythology. There is no way to compare it. I mean, that would be like comparing apples to oranges. There is no way to compare the two in any degree accuracy that would say purely Christianity is better or Japan is better. My personal opinion is I'd rather live in Japan. But then again, that's just me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Japanese mythology. I love Norse mythology, I love Japanese mythology. But I'd move to Japan in a heartbeat. And it doesn't have to do with necessarily with the samurai thing or nothing like that. It has to do a lot with the really just the way the mythology is, the way it is centralized around the balance of the soul. Oh, hey girl, how you doing? Okay, so it is very much. I look at a culture and I look at it from a perspective of a person that doesn't know anything about it. And this is why I've stressed throughout the video. I don't dispute whether or not there could be a hell, whether or not there could be a heaven, whether or not there could be demons, whether there could not be demons. I don't dispute any of these topics. Because there's so many cultures that take so many different viewpoints on these same topics. And so I look at each and every culture and I take them all in and I'm like, okay, so if this culture reaches that point, how does that compare to this one? But I don't try to see which ones are better. I try to actually look at them and say, okay, what makes them different? What makes them work for them? And so I try to look at these viewpoints, and anyways, get out of that. Oh, oh God. I'm dying over here. Oh God. Okay. 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 The topic. Oh God. I'm gonna get my back now. Okay, what we were talking about. Okay, well, no, really, I was talking about okay, I was talking about the how I view cultures, and I used the topic of cannibalism because there are cultures that practice cannibalism, and for them, the cannibalism isn't just to eat the person. They only practice cannibalism when a particular person of note, like a loved one, has died. They eat their loved one, not just to eat them. It's to take in the soul. Yeah, it's to take in the soul. It's to honor them by having their soul become part of them. You're intaking their essence, their soul, and you're holding it within you until you die, basically. And so it is forever keeping your ancestors with you. It's an odd concept when looked at from a modern day perspective. However, this is where the cultural anthropology and the anthropologist in me has a very different mindset. I don't look at it from a modern day person that has a culture. I look at it from the perspective of a person that has no culture, and I look at it from a very open mindset. And I try to understand and take in the information on why they would do this and what makes it to them right. What makes the eating of their loved one a good idea? What is the concept behind it that means that they would do so? And so it's a very open mindset, and it's what anthropologists actually practice. And then he segued and to say he's curious about that. anyways, as I was telling Fang earlier, oh God, sorry, Max. I called him Fang. I don't know why. Max. I was telling Max that I'm gonna set up under the Discord the distinction between the demons and the cryptics, just so people understood a that just so people understood that 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 there will be considered a difference between demons and supernatural entities. Because this whole purpose of the video originally was to discuss the the how other cultures would view the concept of heaven, hell, you know, demons and spirits, how they would view it. You know, what their equivalents to heaven or hell would be if they had one. And so it was just kind of one of those things like I was like going over the various concepts and not necessarily disputing or refuting any which one of them. It was just, going over the various different concepts of what these different cultures have and what would they consider a demon, what they would consider not a demon, and how that might apply to something like a kitsune would being considered a demon in Japanese mythology, and if, for instance, using that logic, would a centaur be, you know, fall under that category, for instance? And this is kind of, now I want to specify that I do actually I am kind of writing a book or a series of books, I should say, and where I do use the terms earthbound and hellbound demons, where demons is a catch-all term. And it's not a catch-all term that they themselves created, by the way. It is a catch-all terms that the humans created and just became something adopted by them because it fits. You in the books you have people that are supernatural creatures, but they use the term demons pretty much as just catch all, but they specify the differences. And so it's really just catch all. It's easier than it's easier to use demon, one word, that's simple to use and it lumps it all together. And so I want to explain why it would be considered a catch-all term, because it's the humans that gave them the catch-all term, primarily the Christians. Yes, in the book I do kind of harp on the Christians a little bit on this one, but to be fair, there's only like one section, well, not say one section, it's probably like a chapter or two. Uh, not okay. I said wrote a few. I'm still writing them. I'm working on them. The book series that I'm working on is called A River of Blood and Tears. Well, the first book is called that, River of Blood and Tears, and it's actually an analogy. I'm not saying analogy, a metaphor. It's a literal and it's both a literal river of blood and tears, but it's also a metaphor. The main character is named Achille, which is the Italian word for Achilles. And so, Achille Abbandonato, which is the Italian word for abandoned, he is a dragon, half dragon and half human. His mother is a mortal human woman, and his father was a humanoid Well, okay, I say humanoid. He had a human-ish body, but he had dragon wings and could breathe fire. and by this point, the demons had adopted the term demons as catch-all. You know, a demon could refer to a unicorn. It could refer to a pure dragon. It could refer to really anything that was supernatural. And it was just because the humans kept on referring to a lot of them as demons. And so, because the majority of them were being called demons, why not adopt it? It's just because it fits. You know, it's something that why invent new words for something that already exists? And so, you know, it fits. And so the category is split: Hellbounds and Earthbounds. Hellbounds, they're the demons from hell. They're the ones that want to come into our world and fuck shit up. Earthbound demons are just all the supernatural entities in our world. They do not want trouble with humans. In fact, they would very much love just to live alongside us and not necessarily get into fights. Minus the vampires. The vampires would very much love to live amongst humans, mainly because it's easier to get food. And it's because of the vampire's tendency to want to nom nom a human that there are groups of the Earthbounds that look at the vampires and think like, are they really Earthbounds? Or yes, werewolves would fall under that very same category actually. And so they look at the werewolves in this case are, well, not necessarily, because werewolves don't necessarily need to eat a person. There are various other cultures that have a equivalent to a werewolf, but don't lose their minds mid transformation. There's the what's it called? The Honshu, I believe it's called in Japanese mythology. It's basically a person that's able to transform into a wolf. They don't lose their minds when they transform, but they do take on a wolf form. And so there are various other cultures that do have these beast forms, but they don't lose their minds. And so it all depends on which cultural version you look at. And this is kind of where it was halfway talking. I was talking about that earlier in the video. But in the River of Blood and Tears, werewolves, they would just love to live amongst humans because any other day they could pass for a human, really. And so, but vampires, they would just love to live amongst humans because, hey, food, causes a bit of havoc occasionally. But and so there are people that look at the vampires and look, are they truly earthbound, or should we consider them hellbound? The vampires, of course, not helping themselves in any regard to this. And so, Achille Abandonado, um, his father is dead. Typical storyline here, story plot here. His father was a great warrior, and his father had sealed away a very powerful hellbound demon by the name of Cryo. And yes, he is a ice demon. Only this ice demon is capable of plunging the entire world into one big ice age where the entire crust of the earth and even its molten core becomes ice. Yeah, yeah. You think Cryonis is bad from Greek mythology. This motherfucker will transform the entire world into a literal snowball. Yeah. Even the Earth's molten core will cease to function. It will cease to be molten. It will then become a solid piece of hunk of frozen metal. Yeah, to say that it would be a very cold day in hell when Cryo gets out is an understatement. Cryo could plunge not only the world but the solar system and possibly even beyond it into what is known as absolute zero temperatures, meaning all heat is gone. You may think being at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius for that matter. Well, wait, yeah, actually they're not the same temperature. Basically, yes. But he's not necessarily that particular one. Either way, so so his father has sealed away Cryo. Well, he had died doing so. Each Earthbound has his own demon weapons per se, sort of like in the Devil May Cry series, the idea of rebellion or the demon sword Dante or the demon sword Sparta. They're blades, they're demon blades. But these weaponries, okay, yeah, and so you had these demon blades that form from these Earthbounds, but these weapons form out of out of various circumstances. And Achille Abandonado had always had these dreams. His armor was in tatters. He would be walking down this barren wasteland, you know, acid geysers spewing out some form of acid, basically like Yellowstone Park, actually. And he seeks shelter under a rock outcropping, and his armor again was in tatters. He was injured. Apparently, humans had injured him so badly, and he commented on how he should have expected their betrayal. And but then it starts to rain, but the rain is very odd. It is a rain of both blood and tears. He gets a little confused. Why is it raining blood and tears? Well, when he sticks his head out from under the rock outcropping, all of a sudden there's a tidal wave of blood and tears. Well, he starts to try to run from it, and then it swallows him up. He's now being dragged adrift in this river of blood and tears. And so he eventually finds a log, and he's able to pull himself on top of this log. Now, he's adrift in this river of blood and tears. No way out, nothing, just no land for anywhere. This river has almost formed an ocean. Well, now there's this light above him, and a this hand of light reaching out to him, you know, asking him to take their hand. This entity that is talking to him, telling him to take their hand, and so he's, at first he thinks it's some form of angel, some sort of entity come to take him away to the afterlife. He thinks he's dead and now this entity has come to take him away. Only it's not. The voice sounds familiar, but he can't quite put his finger on it. But he knows that person is supposed to be alive, or at least to be alive at some point. Yes, basically he doesn't know the voice per se, but he just knows that they're alive, or maybe alive somewhere. Basically, they could be born at some time. And so, but knowing that the person they're reaching out their hand to him isn't an enemy, and that this person loves him to the extent that they don't care what he is. They just want to be with him. And so he reaches out his hand, clasping the hand of whoever was pulling him off the log. Well, as he's pulled off the log, the ground beneath him solidifies and forms this Garden of Eden like lush jungle full of bountiful fruit and everything. And now there's these other glowing entities around him in various other shapes and sizes. Some of them seemingly serpentine in their shape. Some of them more humanoid. Some having tails, some having not tails. And these lights, these figures are about to resolve into what they really look like when he's woken up. He always wakes up just before these faces are revealed to him. And the beginning of the book is him waking up to his mother basically telling him it's time to get up and time to do chores around the house. At this point in time, Achille Abandonado is right around the human age of 10. Although for his kind, him being a half dragon, he could easily live centuries, even thousands of years if allowed to. Like an Astartes in Warhammer 40k, he is essentially immortal. He could live for a very long time until someone decides to kill him, or manages to kill him. He can die, and he will eventually die of old age. But it won't be for a very long time, put it that way. And so he goes about his chores, and the current time era of this point in the book is right around the time of just after... hold on. Around about the time that the Catholic Church is in massive ascendance. Right around the time maybe medieval to Renaissance era. I haven't quite decided yet. And so he goes around the house, cleaning, whatnot, basically doing the usual chore stuff. Again, his father is dead, long dead. But he knows what he is. He knows of his father. His mother has told him so many stories of his father, how she and him fell in love and whatnot. And he knows he does have family that are on his father's side of the family. But he also knows that there are many people in the village that would love to see him dead on the cross, burning at the stake. And that's the majority of the village, actually, mind you. The only one keeping the villagers at bay is the town's priest. The priest is actually a friend of his father's. A priest who had once mended his father's injuries when he met his mother. And so this priest, having not known who his father was, or what his father was at the time, could not bring himself to truly hate him after knowing what he was. I mean, they were friends, brothers almost. So what would make him believe all of a sudden that his friend, his brother, is an evil entity? He'd gotten to know Achilles' father without knowing his father was the church's definition of a demon. So, almost in a way of honoring his father's last wishes of his son and wife living peacefully in the town under the priest protected them, kept the villagers at bay. Eventually, the church calls the priest away, and now there's a new, very strict priest in the town, who then rallies the villagers up and proceed to basically do what religious fanatics do: grab pitchforks and torches, and then proceed to torch the mother and child's home. Yeah, basically. Oh, Luna, 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 Luna. I'd have to dig up the character book because I actually wrote up the names of the characters. Imagine for yourself a human woman. A human woman that is, well, okay, she's not a dragon, she's a human woman. She's the love of Achille Abandonado in the modern time. Yeah, Achille Abandonado by this point is pretty old as far as humans would be concerned, but to him, he's no more than in his mere 20s. This young woman is very much a don't press your luck, boy, you're gonna get slapped. I mean, she doesn't take anyone's shit, really. I mean, she's very much she doesn't need help. I mean, oh well, kind of does, but kind of doesn't. When it comes to fighting other Earthbound demons, she kind of needs the help. The way Achille Abandonado meets this woman is he and his group are trying to get into this store to recover a Hellbound demon artifact so that they can seal it away and try to, not have it fall into human hands. And it's in a human bookstore. And it happens to be a Hellbound demon book. Yeah, it doesn't take a rocket science to know the kind of dangers that would pose. Anyways, well, there's a particular character in this one that's a snake Earthbound demon. He's basically he's got a human torso and well, each of these demons per se, again, it's in the catch-all term, so ignore the term demon, just input in your head supernatural or cryptic. They all have a human form, but even though they have a human form, they do have certain attributes that give them similarities to what they really are. For instance, Achille Abandonado, in his true, humanoid dragon state, he has, he's got scales. He's got wings. But in his human form, his skin's just rough. And he's got very, he's got a bit of longer nails, almost claw-like. But other than that, his skin's just very rough. And so, there's another one that I believe I named Hagrid. Yeah, the guy's supposed to be Scottish or something. I forgot exactly what I named him. But he's an archaeologist, focusing more or less on their species, cultural artifacts. And he's from England. Best part is he's actually a ferret, Earthbound demon. So, picture this for a moment. Picture this: a person that, on any other occasion, without being in human form, is a humanoid ferret. Sounds adorable, doesn't it? Then imagine that same person in a similar attire to maybe like Indiana Jones or something, wielding a shotgun. Not such a cute ferret now, is it? Anyways, the they call him Bones pretty much because he's an archaeologist. But in his human form, he still has that ferret odor to him, and his head hair, has that same ferret kind of oily, greasy kind of texture to it. And what's even better is his love interest. His love interest is again, I'd have to find the darn book where I wrote down their names and who they're paired with. but her but her nickname is Motherboard. Yes, but he's not fat. He's not fat. He's no. I like your version better. Hagrid from Harry Potter as a ferret with a shotgun. That is an amazing image. I just love that already. Oh my god. Forget Indiana Jones. Hagrid-sized person that looks like a ferret with a shotgun. That is kind of funny, actually. Anyways, his love interest is that kind of makes it kind of even funnier. Um, his love interest, her nickname is Motherboard. She's a hacker. She also happens to be a earthbound snake demon. On any other occasion, other than when not in her human form, she has a humanoid body, like from the upper torso, from the abdomen up. The rest of her is just a snake tail. In her human form, her skin is rough one direction. If you were to for instance, if you were to go this way on her arm, it would be rough. Go the other direction and it's very smooth. She also has very, very reptilian eyes in her human form. Something no one seems to question. Well, I think it's mostly because no one else is looking deep into her eyes other than Bones. And yes, I have a hacker snake person in love with a with a archaeologist ferret person. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. Now, there's another one that's a wolf kind of person. He is able to transform into a wolf, mind you. He's not a full-on werewolf. He's half human as well. Wait, okay, Luna, there is actually a story behind this, okay? I'm trying to swing around to that, okay? The way the earthbound demons work versus how they mingle with humans is they're very secretive. Most humans wouldn't be aware that they are amongst a earthbound demon until something really crazy happens. Okay, because here's the thing. Because the earthbound demons are more than aware that some humans do not like them. They very much love to kill them. And so they do have these sections of the towns that are shielded in a way. They got these special wardings that almost like they're considered like Diagon Alley from Harry Potter. It's in London, but it's in a way not in London, if you catch my drift. So, so these are places where they can basically be themselves. But outside the city, most humans aren't aware that they're amongst them. And so this human girl, forgot her name for the life of me, but here's the thing. She actually is very take charge. And Motherboard's brother, older brother by you, named Rogue, he's basically a thief, uh, was trying to lockpick his way into the bookstore. which happened to be protected by a fairly complex lock system. Well, here comes this human woman. You know, she doesn't quite care what these guys are up to. She just knows that she hates the actual owner of the bookshop. So what she does is she basically just kind of moves Rogue aside and just within 3 seconds picks the lock. And so they all enter, and kind of one of those like crap kind of moments, and now they got a human that's watching us, and there's kind of those things where they know that having her along, or just having her know that they're trying to break in is a bad thing. And so, and the fact that she's also kind of still curious on what they're doing, so she's kind of keeping an eye on them. She also happens to see the book that they grabbed, like they knew what they were looking for. Well, okay. Because here's the thing. The way, because here's the thing. The way the story goes in the book is that for a long time she doesn't know that the others she's around are demons. She doesn't know this. And here's the thing. She doesn't really, in the way she finds out that Achille is a demon is actually the hard way. She is being attacked by by a hellbound demon, and well, Achille took pretty much a large amount of umbrage at, considering at this point they were dating. And so he draws his demon sword, a massive blade, around about okay. Picture the size, the overall height of your room. Okay, that's how tall Achille Abandonado's sword is, fully extended. When it is shrunk, it is probably about the size of it's probably about the size of like up to your doorknob maybe, and split into 2 different blades. But this is gonna split the point. Well, he took his demon form in front of her. Something he's certainly not supposed to do, but she's in trouble, and well, it's a hellbound demon trying to nom nom her, and he was not about to have that. And well, here's the thing. Even though she isn't a demon herself, she is still able to use certain spells. Because even though humans may not be able to use the powers of the demons, they're more than capable of using the spells that, like, from various tomes and whatnot. They're more than capable of this. It's just not many people are willing to pick up a strange book labeled Fire Magic, open it up, and decide, wait, this is instructing me how to ignite things with nothing but the snap of my fingers. I'm gonna try that. Most logical people are like, this is a little bullshit. Bonk. But here's the thing. The reason why it's mostly for plot reasons. Well, okay, here's the thing, Luna. Here's the thing. She actually does have a bit of backstory herself. She's not just a human. You see, she actually has a massive hatred. Not say a massive hatred, but she just has a massive dislike for the church system. She actually, her parents got in a car accident, and her parents died. She ended up in a Catholic orphanage. The nuns of said orphanage tried to have her become a nun. She was not having any of this and ran away from home. She had been living basically on the streets for most of her life. She had learned a lot of lockpicking skills, and she had learned a lot of street skills. She actually could have gone toe to toe with Achille on a few occasions and definitely caused some serious injury. Mind you, Achille on any other occasion would have been able to, well, pick her up with one hand. Not literally that he had hands massive enough to pick her up on one hand. I mean, like, just like grab her by, you know. Well, here's the thing: she wasn't necessarily a demon slayer because she was just okay. The story of her is that she's a very sexy woman, by the way. Yeah, and I remember her nickname. Her nickname was supposed to be Vixen. She's a very sexy woman. Oh, believe me, she becomes one. She becomes one. Imagine for a moment the sheer nonplussed look on a demon capable of freezing the planet when a human woman runs straight up to him and decides to try to kick him where his balls would be. And she kicks him with enough force to actually confuse him and make him jump a bit. She actually has enough cojones to actually run up to her captor and actually kick him in the balls. Not that he actually has them, but it was still enough to confuse the hell out of him. Because put it this way, not many see a giant ice monster of a demon and decide to run up to it and kick its balls. She doesn't give two fucks about whether or not, whether or not you can do her harm. As long as she can get her frustration out on you, she can at least make something worthwhile of it. She is very much a take charge person. She's very close to this way. Again, as I said, she's more than capable of giving Achille a run for his money. And bear in mind, Achille could, in his dragon form, easily just swat her aside. But the fact that she is able to get him, knock the wind out of him in general is pretty impressive. In fact, yeah. In fact, there is one point in the book where it was kind of an accident, actually. Let's just say Rogue was being his usual mischievous self. They all know by this point that Achille and this girl have the hots for each other. Quite literally, in Achilles' sense, he is a fire dragon, so he does literally have the hots for her. There have been multiple times where in the book I've considered making fire puns. Anyways, so Rogue bumps into Achille, knocking him into her, which unfortunately, because of his bulk. Okay, for a moment, actually imagine that Achille is right about the buffness of, say, like, Dwayne Johnson, okay? He's that big a buff, okay? And so, Rogue knocks Achille into her. The couch is right behind her, by the way. And she trips over the couch. He's still stumbling. He falls on top of her. And due to the fall, they lock lips. This is before they started dating. The incident, later known as the dragon nose breakage incident resulted it ended with Vixen launching a very well landed right hook and landing a very um, well weighted right hook into Achilles' nose, knocking him off her and breaking his nose. Bear in mind, this would have been a very inconsequential injury, as it would have healed pretty much overnight. But still, the fact that she had enough strength in her to not only knock him off her, and break his nose all at the same time. Yeah. Again, yeah. Let's just say she she's pretty much fearless. And here's the thing: the first book is okay. Cryo basically ends up kidnapping her in order to take revenge on Achilles' father through Achille. Typical, really. Well, Achille goes to try to rescue her. By the time he gets, get, by the time he goes to try to get to her cell to rescue her, she's already sweet talked the guards into handing over the keys so she can unlock her own cage. Although it did kind of help that by this point Achille was rampaging through Cryo's fortress, and the guards were a little bit kind of concerned, like, should we still be here? So she took the opportunity to sweet talk them into giving her the keys. Yeah, they gave the keys to their own prisoner. Of course, the second they handed the keys to her, they got a good. They were relieved of a good few pounds in via the removal of their heads by a very scorching hot sword. Okay, bear in mind. Okay, she isn't necessarily ridiculously strong. She's just she's just hella determined. She's not buff in any sense of the phrase. But here's the thing: she knows where to land a punch. She knows how to land a punch, and she knows where a person will hurt in general. And bear in mind, there's not many people in the world that would think to kick Cryo in the balls, so it kind of knocked him off guard. He was not expecting to have this woman, this mortal woman, run up to him and then proceed to land a boot to his nether region. And she was wearing boots, by the way. They were actually out hiking when he kidnapped her. So, so it was something he wasn't expecting. And she's been living on the streets, and because she's pretty good looking, she tends to own it. She knows she's good looking and she owns it. She doesn't use her body to get money, but she does use her body to talk her way out of situations. She's never had sex with anyone, according to her. She is strong. She is strong and independent. That she is. I meant as in physically. You know, she is, for a person her size, she is definitely strong. But she's very good looking. She owns her good looking, and she uses her looks to sway people into accepting something she's doing. Like, for instance, using her looks and, of course, her talent for sweet talking people, and just sweet talking a couple hellbound demons into giving her the keys to unlock her own cage. And she is very strong and independent. And, well, let's just say there's a lot of funny incidences that I have planned where she has either slapped or punched Rogue. Rogue is an older brother to Motherboard, but he doesn't act it. If anything, Motherboard acts like a big sister. So, and let's just say when she found out what Achille was, and then what found out what everyone else was, she was a little freaked out. Well, considering I've already added in that she can land a blow that's pretty strong enough to actually knock Achille off her. And mind you, Achille being big and buff does take a lot of punching, so she can land. So she is strong for her size. She is very strong, and so just imagine the nonplussed look on that cryotic and cryo demon face when all of a sudden he's kicked in what would have been his balls. It's kind of funny, to be honest. I mean, she has on multiple occasions, she actually on one point called Achille a noob firecracker. Pretty much because they were trying to play a game at one point, and he was getting kind of agitated. She called him a noob firecracker. uh, and okay, you want to hear one of the times he tried to pick up line on her? Oh my god, it was actually kind of funny. Uh, it was one of those face palm worthy pickup lines. It was like, he actually asked her, "Hey," he actually said, "Hey, gorgeous, are you?" Well, that's the comedic idea here with them is that they're age wise, older brother and she's his younger sister, but the two of them don't act it. Anyways, the Big Mom, he actually says, "Hey, gorgeous." Oh, I had it in my head a second ago. Oh, what's it? Where was it? Oh, it's like, "Hey, gorgeous, are you a bonfire? Because you're." Oh no, wait, how was it? What was it? Ah, crap. Ah, I had it in my head a second ago. Oh my god, I knew I had it a second ago. Uh, oh man, I had it here a second ago. Oh, it was like he had told her, how are you not causing a forest fire over here? Cause you're smoking over here." Basically, he was calling her smoking hot, but he was trying to say that it was a what's a that why isn't she causing a forest fire because she's smoking hot? He tried. He tries. Achille is just he tries pickup lines. Eventually, he just gives up on the pickup lines. Oh, believe me, it's just like, it was funny as hell. I had a, I know I had a better one, but that was the one I could remember at the time. Yeah, and so he just he eventually stopped with the yes, face palm worthy, face palm worthy. Even she was like, really, really, that's your best pickup line. Admittedly, this was right around the time that they knew each other well enough to know that he was not great with pickup lines. She choked and she laughed purely because he was trying. He tries so hard to actually try his hand at pickup lines or jokes. Achille isn't much of a joker, let alone a flirter. And so, he just was like, how do I do this? Just like, so, the first book is intended to end with them and the others settling down in a new city. Mainly Houston, Texas. Yes, I picked my own home, my own city to actually have them settle down in, and they open up a bar ish. It's kind of more like a house slash bar. I kind of went with the Devil May Cry idea here, where the bar is kind of their house and kind of where they run their business. Because here's the thing: Akira and his group are basically mercenaries, and much like the Devil May Cry series, they only take jobs that involve possible demon artifacts. So they only accept sorry, very special customers. And so when they open up this new one inside the new city, yeah, okay. Bear in mind, he is not. Akile is horrible at pickup lines. He never dated a woman in his life. She's the first one he was ever trying to date. So yeah, you gotta cut him some slack. Anyway, so by the time the first book ends, they're opening up their new bar slash business place. And well, at this point, Vixen is very much pregnant. She had found out she was pregnant during her captivity, and now by this point she's pretty far along when they're opening it up. The second book is about, let's see, it was about 18 years later, while they're in that same city, and now they have a daughter. The daughter is part dragon demon like her father. Only she's a bit of a different type. You see, the dragon demons have and so the dragon demons have various different categories, all having to do with their strengths. Achille is a brute. He's all out attack, you know, all out defense, but he's not very fast, not very agile. And of course, you have your glass cannons, which are lightning fast, high attack, but are not much in defense. And then you have your what they call nobles, which are basically well-rounded versions. His daughter happens to be a noble. Yeah, it's like 2:06 a.m. here. I did not expect to be doing the video this long, actually. Anyway, so the daughter, well, she still has to go to school. Well, she's nearing graduation, and she has a thing for this boy, this human Scottish boy. Yes, of course, I went with the Scottish boy. Well, he doesn't know what she is. Or, well, he has his suspicions, but he ain't talking. And, well, there is an anti-Earthbound demon agency that had risen up. And is now in the process of trying to locate all the Earthbound demons and neutralize them. The imminent threat to human society. Yeah, typical situation here. Well, they notice the boy hanging around her for quite some time. Then they find out what a kid. Then they find out her entire family are demons, save for her mother. Well, interesting targets. How about we leverage them a bit? Make the little girl more acceptable of our demands. So they, of course, kidnap the boy. Typical. I'm gonna have to cut this video short. Good lord. I'm probably gonna have to conk out here soon. Anyways, the overall thing is that this is basically her trying to live up to the awesomeness of her mother and father, while also just trying to discover, her own place in the world, because the world is starting to change, starting to be more accepting of her kind, but she doesn't know how to do it. She doesn't know how to adjust. Yeah, I think I want to conk out. I'm sorry. Anyways, hold on a second. Yeah, there we go. Where is it? Where are you? Yeah, this video was a little longer than I really expected today, but I thank you all for watching, and I hope y'all liked the little teasers I gave of the books that I'm writing, as well as the little discussions I have with some of my chat here. Anyways, I have been Cactuma, Fury Warriors, and I'll see you all in the next bout. Have a good day, or well, good night, or whatever.